Hey everyone, I'm Danielle Jensen, the Mom Ambassador Liaison here at Moms Meet. Thank you for joining us today for the So Delicious webinar, where you'll get your questions answered by celebrity fitness and wellness guru John Pierre. If you have any questions, please be sure to type them into the chat window. With that said, John, please take it away.
Oh, thank you. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. And thank you to all the mothers for being mothers, one of the hardest jobs out there. Today, what I'd like to do is I'd like to just tell you a little bit about myself, and then I'd like to go into some very important information for yourself as a mother and then also for your children. So I've been teaching nutrition for 25 years, nutrition and fitness, but my specialty is actually in enhancing cognitive functioning in seniors. So I've done that. It's one of the first persons in the United States to create actually brain building programs for seniors. And I've done that for just as long, actually 25 years. A majority of the work that I do is with children and young adults. And recently I was at the Capitol in Washington, D.C. There I was actually talking to about 170 congressional people about the implications of poor diet and poor lifestyle and the way it's affecting our children today with all sorts of problems with violence and especially all the shootings that we're seeing in schools and assaults that are taking place. And there I was talking about when you have children who still believe in Santa Claus and they're playing violent video games and they're watching pornography in 6th grade, they're listening to gangster rap, and you're coupling that with a nutrient deficient diet, and then you're surprised that children are acting out the way they do. It's actually impossible for a child to have a normal functioning brain and immune system and body with the lifestyles they're facing today. 90% of our diet today is either processed foods and animal products combined. So it leaves about 10% of their diet to be plant matter. And it's the plant matter that's actually nourishing them. But since we're only getting about 10% in our lifestyle today, that's a big challenge for children because remember, they're neurotransmitters. These brain chemicals that are allowing them to think and have proper emotions are not being able to be formed because they don't have the nutrients. On average, the average person in America eats 150 pounds of sugar per person in the United States. That's more than I weigh. And every time they're gobbling up soda pop and candy and ice cream and they're eating up all the sugar, they're also destroying nutrients in their body because in order to metabolize sugar and to turn it into energy, you need nutrients. You need B vitamins, you need magnesium, you need chromium, you need all these different important vitamins and minerals. And if you just look at the B vitamins alone, B vitamins are used for normal cognitive functioning, and they're used for normal metabolism and neurological firing. So it's interesting that we have a whole host of metabolic problems in children today due to B vitamin deficiency, and of course, all the attention deficit, hyperactivity, and cognitive disorders they have today. So we need to take a closer look at our diet. And one of the things that I propose to parents is that they start increasing the volume of plant matter in their child's diet. And that's not always very easy because most children don't want to eat things that aren't sugary, that aren't salty, and aren't fatty. So when you're eating plant matter, those aren't any of those generally. So what I propose is that you start using your blender to create smoothies. Because when we make smoothies for children, we can get large amounts of plant matter in there, and we can sweeten that smoothie with fruit, which is more plant matter and more nutrients. And so what I usually will have my clients do, and a lot of the parents I work with, I'll have them use a non-dairy milk, something like So Delicious, their almond milk, which is really good, or the coconut, and that's going to be their base. And then from there, they're going to add some fruit, preferably frozen fruit, to make it a little bit more chilled. So they usually use frozen mangoes or frozen blueberries. They can also use frozen bananas if they want. And then they're going to blend that all up. And as that's blending, they're going to start adding greens in. So maybe some kale or some rapini or some spinach, just a little bit at a time. And it's going to color it a little bit, but you're not going to really affect the flavor that much because you have, obviously, the sweetness of the fruit. And then we might add in a little bit of ground flaxseed. That's very important for the omega-3s for normal brain functioning. And then if you choose to, you could also add in other substances too. Sometimes I'll use a green powder that's made from barley or alfalfa. Sometimes I'll use a vegan protein made out of rice or made out of hemp. I could add that. And then basically I create a smoothie for them, and then we have that for breakfast for the kids. And then what I do is if it's like a Saturday and Sunday, I make an extra amount so the kids can take that with them. So when they go to play baseball or they're going to soccer or gymnastics, whatever, they can sip on that smoothie throughout the day. This way, we're increasing the amount of plant matter in their diet with all the nutrients. And one of the things that parents is so important for them to understand is that children are being assaulted continually by toxins all the time in the air, in the water, in the food, everywhere they go, and they need these antioxidants that are found in plant matter to protect them. So those are predominantly fruits and vegetables, and there's some antioxidants in beans and peas and nuts and seeds too, and grains. But predominantly it's fruits and vegetables. And your brain is about 60% fat, and it's continually being assaulted by these free radicals. So every time you're taking a sip of that, you're in a metaphorical, cartoon-like sense, you're coating the brain with the police, the fire department, the paramedics, the protective team that basically prevents the assault to the brain from occurring. So the smoothies are one of the main things that I would work on, and I have a bunch of different information and recipes in my book, The Pillars of Health, on how to do that. The other thing I would do is get a blended soup into the child's diet a couple times a week, and basically a blended soup is a warm smoothie. So we're using a soup base, like oftentimes I'll use carrot juice or celery or tomato juice, and then I turn my blender on, and then I start adding different vegetables, carrots and onions and rapini and broccoli and so forth, and then I get that into a liquid consistency, and there's my soup base now. Put that on the stove on a pot. I add a couple handfuls of steamed vegetables. I might put in some sweet potatoes that I've already cooked and chilled in the refrigerator, and then I slice them. I might add some brown rice, or I might add some pasta. But this way the child gets a massive amount of nutrients. So blended soups and then smoothies are two of the most important things that parents can add to a child's diet. The other thing is we want to make sure that we have lots of fresh fruits and vegetables as snacks. So you should make it a very important point to put on your table, whether it's your dining room table or in the kitchen or wherever you have food, lots of fresh vegetables and fresh fruits out. So cut up carrots, cut up celery, and then have a dip available, whether it's guacamole or salsa or black bean dip, whatever. And then lots of different fruits. So not only just apples, bananas, and oranges, but some kiwis, some dates or some figs, some different fruits, mangoes, even if it's dried fruit. But you want to start introducing your children to a wide variety of different fruits, because remember, each fruit has a different story to tell, just like every vegetable. If somebody has macular degeneration, we go more to green leafy vegetables that have lutein and zeaxanthin, different antioxidants to protect the macula. If somebody has prostate issues, we go to red grapefruit or watermelon. So each fruit or vegetable has a different story to tell, so we want to get a variety of those. Apples generally don't have a lot of antioxidants except in the skin. Same thing with bananas. When you cut a banana, it starts to brown. When you cut an apple, it starts to brown. The reason why is because they don't have a lot of antioxidants. If you cut an apple and you squeeze lemon juice on it, you'll see that the apple won't turn brown. That's because of the high amounts of ascorbic acid or vitamin C that's in the lemon, plus other antioxidants. So we need to get a variety into the child's diet. The other thing I would do is add snacks. I would use non-dairy yogurt, like So Delicious. I'd use the non-dairy ice creams because kids like those, and at least they're not getting hurt by that. It might be hard for parents to hear, but the most dangerous food that you could give a child would be dairy products, because you have to remember that you're taking in a hormonal secretion from a bovine. So you're actually taking in the hormones from a cow that are intended for her baby to make that baby grow from a 65-pound calf into a 700-pound cow. They're very powerful. So when you take a glass of milk, you're taking in 60 different hormones and growth factors in milk. And the biggest concern today we have with children is the rate at which we see precocious puberty. These young girls that are pre-developing, 8 and 9 years of age, they're already starting to develop breast buds and starting menstruation very early. So the younger that you're starting to flood her system with estrogen and all these hormones, the more likely they are to develop reproductive problems and breast cancer and uterus cancer. So it's very, very concerning to many of the scientists and nutritionists out there, the hormones that we see. Now, Monsanto created this bovine growth hormone, so these cows produce a massive amount of milk. And unfortunately, when they produce that much milk, they often get mastitis, which is udder infection. When they get mastitis, then they're basically dosed up with antibiotics. And that's a challenge, because if you look today at the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control, they're very concerned about the resistance that we're seeing with all these different bacteria, because we're running out of antibiotics. Every time you're taking a glass of milk, you're taking in subtherapeutic doses of antibiotics. Your body, the bugs get used to that, and they learn to build a defense. So I would switch to non-dairy. The one that I use predominantly is I use the almond milk from So Delicious, and I use the coconut. But you can also make your own too. You can just take a tablespoon of nut butter, like almond butter, and add it to an 8-ounce glass of water, put it in the blender, and put in 1 date, and whammo, you got your own almond milk. It's a little bit easier to do that than buy it, but no, most people don't want to do that. And the same thing with the So Delicious yogurt. I use that exclusively with all my clients, celebrities, kids, athletes, everyone, because you can just take that, add it to some blueberries, and that's a delicious snack right there. You can also make them popsicles with it. You can just add it, put it in popsicle molds, and put it in the freezer and do that. So those are some of the ways that you can increase the antioxidants while also keeping away from some of the poisons. I think it's very important for parents today when we see these high levels of neurological problems and brain abnormalities in children to realize one of the biggest problems is pesticides. And remember that a pesticide's job is to shut off the central nervous system of an insect and or make them infertile. Well, we are just big insects. So every time that you're feeding pesticide-laden foods to children, you're basically causing them harm. They have little tiny spleens, they have little tiny livers that are used to detoxify a massive amount of these toxins. And the food with the highest amount of pesticides in the world is animal products, because you're taking 12 to 15 pounds of heavily sprayed, unregulated pesticides, not designed for human consumption, putting those on grains, and then feeding that to a cow, and then the cow turns around and gives you a 1-pound burger. That's a massive amount of pesticides in there. So you want to do your very best to buy as much organic as you can, particularly berries. Berries are heavily sprayed, so you want to always buy frozen or any type of berry that's organic. I normally buy frozen because I can have them all year round, and they work really well in smoothies. And when people say, well, what about organic meat or organic milk? Well, when milk is organic and it's not given bovine growth hormone, there still can be contaminants in the grain. But the main concern is that you're taking in hormones from a cow, whether it's sprayed or not. You're still getting her natural hormones. So that is definitely still not a healthy thing. And then parents will say, well, where do my kids get their calcium? And I'd say I'm more concerned about your children getting boron. I'm more concerned about vitamin K, vitamin C, zinc, other components that are for normal bone development. Calcium is just one. I mean, the Bantu women in Africa breastfeed on average 8 to 10 children in a lifetime. They don't get any osteoporosis, and that's a huge calcium strain, yet they only consume about 400 milligrams of calcium a day, and it's all from plant-based sources. When we watch the Bantu, when they migrate, when they move to the United States, and when they adapt our lifestyle, osteoporosis comes back into their life. So it's not a genetic thing, it's a lifestyle thing. So smoothies and soups are critical. Having fresh fruits and vegetables available all the time are important. And I think one of the biggest secrets that I use with children and parents is to make sure that your children are out with you learning about food. So they're in the garden, they're making sprouts with you. Make sure that they're out there in the kitchen with you. I mean, when I work with a client and they ask me what's the most important lesson I can do for my kids, it's always the same. The most important lesson that you can do for your children is to make sure that they help prepare food with you. They have to have a part in it. So when you're making your smoothie, ask them to cut up the banana. Ask them to pour in the berries, because it helps them eat it. They're more inclined to eat it if they took part in it. And you want to let them know that everything doesn't just come from a can, that we make some things. So from a nutritional standpoint, the whole first chapter of my book deals with processed foods and how dangerous they are to children and how influenced children are from advertising industries. And then I just basically show you what to do as a parent and for yourself, because remember, as a mother and you're taking care of your children, you're always on the go and you're rushing around, and you're oftentimes just going to a drive-thru to get that food. And as many parents know, they start putting on 5 pounds here, 10 pounds there, and by the time the child is, 14 years of age, you put on 15 or 20 pounds. So these suggestions also apply to parents. And I think that all families should start eating together, because it's the distancing that we get. When the parent goes to a PTA meeting, the kids are at soccer, and there's this scattered energy. Nobody gets together as a family anymore. That's where we run into problems. So I'm very big into having families eat together and having that time to be quality time amongst one another. The other thing that's important is that we're seeing basically movement has been engineered out of our child's life, because all they're doing is sitting down in front of a video game. They're watching TV, playing, video games, or they're not doing anything physical anymore. When I was a kid, you couldn't even get into a soccer field or baseball field or for play tennis, because there were so many kids out there doing that. Now when I take a client out to the park, there's no kids there. They're all inside. And aside from the diabetes we see in children, I have kids come in my office, 12 years of age, over 200 pounds. So they have diabetes and obesity. We see heart disease already starting actually at 3. When children have been killed in automobile accidents, when they're autopsied, we see plaque already in the arteries. And we know by the time they're teenagers, they have measurable blockages. And exercise causes vasodilation. It opens up the blood vessels. And by opening up the blood vessels, it allows more blood to flow. And it also can reduce the low-density lipoproteins, the bad cholesterol, and increases the good HDL. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging our kids to move as much. We've lowered the standards in the military for young men and women to get in because no longer can these young men and women even pass the physical fitness tests. So we're moving exercise and movement out of our society. I would suggest that as a parent, you're outside playing with your child as much as possible. When I have kids come in my office, I'm always bringing balloons and toys in there, and I'm just saying, hey, let's see how you move. Most of these kids have no coordination. They have no agility. They definitely don't have any stamina. So it's something to be very concerned about, because one of the things that fitness does is it helps boost your self-esteem. You know, I've been involved in women's rights for 30 years, and I teach a lot of classes on boot camps and self-defense and safety for women. And as women become more physically fit, that translates to more emotionally fit, and they're more mentally strong. They're more capable of handling, traumas that can occur to them or challenges. So get your kids moving as much as possible. And then also what's really important is that we start working with these children's brains a little bit differently than we are in school. And as a parent, you know just as well as any other parent that we have a tendency to get bored. We do the same things over and over. We say have the same friends, and your brain starts to deteriorate. So what you need as a parent is to start to stimulate your brain just as much as you need to continually to stimulate a child's. You want to make sure for you as a parent that you're reading something different every day. So you're not just reading the same, nursery rhymes and everything to your child, because that's not just helping your brain. So you want to make sure that you're doing something different. You're doing crossword puzzles, Sudoku. You're playing some sort of board games with children that make you think, something to deal with words like Scrabble. Realize that as a parent, your stress level's high. The higher your stress level is, the more cortisol that gets secreted from the adrenal glands. And the more cortisol that gets secreted, the more likely you are to develop belly fat. But that's the least of my concern. My main concern is that this cortisol can destroy a portion of your brain called the hippocampus. And that hippocampus region is responsible for memory and creativity. And so that's one of the first signs that I look for when I see clients coming in that have high stress. We take a look to see how well their brain is functioning and how creative they are. Oftentimes with soldiers or people who have been experience a lot of stress, they've lost that. It's important to realize the time in your life where your child's brain is growing the most is when they're children, because everything to them is new. But as they start getting older, things become the same. They know how to spell their name, they know basic math, and they know the states and things like that. So you continually want to be stimulating them all the time with new questions and new games and new things, learning new musical instruments, especially being outside playing sports that require coordination. So hitting a ball, catching a ball, things like hopscotch. Just running around is good too. But we just want to make sure that we're doing something to stimulate the brain. And, I was really the first person to create these brain-building programs for seniors. And I use the same program for kids that I do for seniors. It's the same thing. It's predominantly a plant-based diet to keep the arteries healthy and clean, get the antioxidants high, exercise to increase circulation, stimulating the brain with unique and unusual things. And I have a big section in my book, The Pillars of Health, on the brain. The last important section of my book, which is the cornerstone of everything that I teach, is based on compassion and love. And unfortunately, I'm very sad to say that children aren't being raised with that anymore, because as busy as parents are, unfortunately, oftentimes TV and video games and their own friends are basically raising them. And when we see the amount of violence in children today, and the stuff that children tell me when they come in my office is very, very scary. And when you see some of these video games that they actually are having in the video game, they're actually having sex with prostitutes. They're running over animals in the video game, and they're shooting and killing people. And the more that you expose a child to that, the more you expose them to violence and extreme violence like that, and disrespecting women and animals, you have to understand that a child basically is learning what they see and what they hear. They're very susceptible to it, and that's why advertisers spend billions of dollars a year to manipulate children through video games and cartoons and TV shows, because they know they're very susceptible to it. So as parents, it's very important that you monitor what the music that your children are listening to. A lot of parents are buying their children rap music and gangster rap music, and they've never listened to it. And they don't realize that that's actually XXX audio music. That's subliminally programming them all day long. So when they're calling women in these types of music derogatory terms, when your child goes to the playground, they're also using those terms. And many parents have told me about that when they read their child's text on their phone, they are abhorred by the amount of vulgarity that they see in these children's text. So you need to monitor the music. You need to definitely be very cautious about video games because most of them all are based on war and violence, especially something like Grand Theft Auto that made almost $100 or $500 million in the first couple days of sales. That's a very, very, very violent video game and very destructive to children's minds. So be cautious with that, and be cautious of the words that you use because, sticks and stones can break your bones, but, words can tear your heart apart. And when children are using words like hate and kill, those are very powerful words. To say the word hate, or I hate this, or I'm going to kill that, or do that, they're very violent words. And oftentimes when I'm working with a family or living with a family, actually, especially celebrities, so one of the first things that I do is I look at the vocabulary that they're using. I look at the images that they have, whether they're pictures in the home or what type of shows they're watching, and I start making changes with those. So as a parent, it's very important that you take control of that because it's probably, I'd say, the most important thing in my book, I would say, is the whole compassion and love chapter. If I could just write a book just on that, I would do that, but my publisher wanted all my information in there. So that I would do. And the other thing I would make sure you do is when your kids are doodling and things like that, take a look at the doodles that they're making, the little drawings, because that's often basically what they're thinking about. When they're making pictures of somebody getting stabbed or blown up, that's something to be concerned about. I have children always writing affirmations. I am happy, I am loving, and I just have them write those all the time. And as a parent, if you have really young kids, you can use it as a reward. You can ask if your child would write 20 of these sentences. You want to practice their handwriting, but it's a positive sentence, and they'll get some sort of reward. But you want to continually be programming them with positive, uplifting things. The other thing that I like to do with kids is I like to make sure that children create a collage that they put up in their bedroom. And the collage is something that's very powerful because they're seeing it all the time. It's kind of like their coat of arms, and it represents who they are. So what we do is just get a lot of magazines, and we have them cut out real positive pictures of who they want to be, who they aspire to be, or things that motivate them. They also write positive words there. So they'll write love or success or happiness, whatever they choose to want to write, as long as it's something uplifting and powerful. And then every week or every month, we have them change the collage. So they're basically just adding on new pictures. Maybe they attain their goal or they just want to change it. So that's very powerful to children. And of course, I do that with my clients also. So I think that's about 25 minutes I've spoken. I'm glad to take any sort of questions that you may have.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, John. That was such a great presentation, and we have a lot of great questions coming in. So the first question a lot of mom ambassadors are asking is, where can they find your book, and do you have a website that they can look at?
Oh, sure. Well, my website is John Pierre, so it's John and then Pierre.com. And yes, you definitely can order my book there. If you click on my book, it'll take you to Amazon. And then the nice thing about that is anytime you order anything from Amazon, as long as you click on my site, I get credit for it. But I also do sell the books by the case at a discount. So if you have mom's meetings and you wanted to order 12 of them, then I get them to you for $20 each, and they're normally $25. So I can have those sent out. You can just send me an email on that. And my email is foods, Foods, like Sam, and then FOR, life, LIFEJP, @yahoo.com.
Okay, great. Thanks. And then we have a question regarding the So Delicious creamer. Wondering if the So Delicious creamer has to be refrigerated.
Hi.
So I'll let Hillary get that.
Yeah, no problem. We make two different kinds of creamers, and we have a refrigerated creamer, and in the Mom's Meat boxes, actually, we provided 2 VIP coupons so that you can buy the creamer for free at your local store, and those are the refrigerated ones, so those always need to be refrigerated. And then we also make a barista-style creamer in French vanilla and original, and those are shelf-stable, so you'll find them in the shelf-stable section of the grocery store, and they don't need to be refrigerated until they're opened.
Okay, great. Hillary, we have one more question for you on the creamers. What is the shelf life of the creamer they're sampling before and after they open it?
For the shelf-stable creamer, the shelf life is probably about 18 months, maybe even 2 years. And that's because it's aseptic, so it's completely airtight packaging. And then once you open it, probably similar to the coconut milk and almond milk refrigerated beverages, it's best used probably within 7 to 10 days or so. But you can take a sniff test too to see if it goes for longer than that.
Okay, great.
And can I mention one more thing? With
Sure.
the creamers, those are really good also to use in smoothies. So you definitely can use the creamers in smoothies. The other thing you can do is you can also take any of the So Delicious, the coconut milk or the almond milk or the creamers, and then put those in ice cube trays. And then you can have those already made and frozen. And then when you make your smoothie, you can put them into the smoothie. So it's nice and it's even more thick that way, and it's even more chilled.
All right, great suggestion. Thank you. We have a question for you, John, wondering if you use So Delicious coconut or almond milk in recipe substitutions that call for dairy milk, and if it will work the same.
Yes, I use the So Delicious. I use all their products, and I use it for everything. I haven't used any dairy products for 30 years, so I've been following the plant-based diet for 30 years. So, yes. But Hillary, maybe you'd have a suggestion on that conversion for regular milk.
Yeah, actually the coconut milk or almond milk, and we also make a cashew milk. Really, those are beverages, and they're really designed to be a substitution for dairy milk, really one-to-one. So if you're using them for different recipes. We also make a new USDA certified organic culinary milk, which is great for cooking. It's a little bit thicker. It's should be sold in either sort of the Thai cooking area or the baking section. You can find it generally in Whole Foods markets. And that is fantastic for any recipes that call for canned coconut milk, sort of for savory Thai dishes or for baking. So I hope that answers that question. And we also have, obviously, our yogurts, which are also great for different recipes as well that we call for dairy yogurt or even sour cream.
Okay, great.
And I just want to reiterate that, in the 30 years that I've been following the plant-based diet and teaching for 25, I would definitely say the most important thing you can do as a parent from a dietary standpoint would be get rid of dairy products. There's no question about that. And more doctors are, the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, which is just PCRM.org, is very adamant about getting children and everyone off dairy products. Dr. Benjamin Spock was one of the first to talk about it. And you've got Dr. Joel Furman and Dr. McDougall. All some of the top doctors in the world are adamantly against dairy products. So that's something I think as a parent, I know it's scary because you've been brainwashed from the dairy industry for so many years to not believe. But if you think about how the Eskimos survived, there was no cows. How did the Asians do it? How do all these different, communities do it? And how do all the people who are following the plant-based do it? Because remember, you're always told that it's calcium that you need, but there's so little calcium that you need in your body. It's other minerals that you need for your bones.
Okay, great. Thanks for going into detail on that. This question can either be for John or Hillary. We have a Mom Ambassador, Anna, wondering what are the advantages to the So Delicious brand over other non-dairy brands?
I'll let Hillary talk about that.
Yeah. So I think probably some of my favorite things about So Delicious are that the passion to do the right thing for people and the planet. So all of our products are certified vegan. They're all non-GMO project verified. We do a lot of work in terms of making sure that we have a low carbon footprint, giving back to different charity organizations. And then really uniquely and special, I think, we really listen to fans. So when fans have provided us input on things that are important to them in terms of ingredients, we've really worked hard to reformulate and change our recipes to respond to those kinds of requests. So, it's one of the reasons, one of the most common things we hear from fans is that they want less sugar. So we now make 6 different beverages that have no sugar added, so they're 1 gram of sugar or less. We have 2 brand new cultured products, which are equivalent really to what you would use like a dairy yogurt, and they're unsweetened and unsweetened vanilla, so they only have 1 gram of sugar per serving, which is naturally occurring from the coconut. And if you compare that to a plain cup of dairy yogurt, that has 12 grams of sugar. So you'd be hard-pressed to find a yogurt with less sugar than our new unsweetened varieties. And then we actually make a no sugar added line of ice creams, which are coconut milk based, and they're sweetened with monk fruit, which is an all natural non-caloric fruit sweetener. So we use organic ingredients whenever possible. There's never any hydrogenated oils or artificial sweeteners or colors. So it's a neat company that way.
All right, great. Thanks. We have a question for John from a mom ambassador wondering if they should avoid feeding their babies dairy products, and if so, what an alternative would be.
Well, I mean, breast milk is the most important thing that a baby could get. That's obvious. I mean, that's all. Not only are you giving the baby your nutrients, but you're giving your natural hormones and antibodies to prevent, disease. But of course, dairy products would be the worst choice for anybody, but particularly children. Because again, when you start taking these foreign proteins, they're not human, they're from a bovine, their body doesn't recognize that protein as human. So what does it do? It puts up its defense and secretes different antibodies. You get inflammation. You get basically a war going on. And that's why so many children get, middle ear, otitis media, middle ear infections. They get asthma. They get allergies. Their immune system gets compromised. Yeah, and anything but that. And I would look at a lot of different sources. Like I think Dr. John McDougall, Dr. Joel Furman, these are all top physicians who basically are against dairy products. There's a really good book and video called Whitewash, and that you can even see it on YouTube, and that goes over all the dangers of cow's milk dairy.
Okay, great. We have a question for Hillary, wondering what the best-selling creamer is.
Oh gosh, I think our best-selling creamer is probably our original refrigerated creamer, and we actually now make it in a larger size because they were so popular. We had them in pints, and now we've gone to quarts because they're so popular. So if you have not tried the creamer yet, do so. People really love it.
And another thing is it's important that you rotate between coffee and teas, because you want to get, coffee does have some antioxidants, so you want to try to buy organic coffee when you can. But you also want to try to get some green tea in your diet too, because of the different variety of antioxidants in there. And then most importantly, what you need to be looking at is, why are you consuming lots of tea or lots of coffee? Because it's a stimulant. So you want to be concerned that you don't need too much stimulation, because if you do, your body's saying, hey, maybe you should be resting. Because if you're tired, you need to rest. And as a parent, you won't be an efficient parent if you're always burning the candle at both ends. And again, that's going to cause more adrenal problems and more cortisol levels. So use coffee and tea in moderation and rest when you need it.
All right, great suggestion. Thank you. We have another question for John. A comment and a question from a mom ambassador saying that she loves the idea of her children doing affirmations and collages, and was wondering if you have any other suggestions for fun, positive activities that you would recommend children doing instead of video games.
Sure. Well, of course, playing any sort of board game that's positive, that deals with words or numbers, is important. But I think also having children create their own games. Come up with your own board game, come up with your own sport around the house. I use a lot of balloons and fabric softeners with kids, just like I do with adults, and we create games with that. And we do brain-building activities. So a child will hitting a balloon back and forth with their parent or grandparent while they're counting backwards by twos from 50. So 50, 48, 46, 44, 42, as they're hitting the balloon back and forth. They're getting physical exercise, and you as a parent are finally getting some exercise, but they're also stimulating their brain and your brain too.
All right, great suggestions. Thank you. We have a question for Hillary or John. If you could just go over what non-GMO Project Verified means.
Sure, I'd be happy to tackle that one. I don't know how familiar you are with genetically modified organisms, but they were introduced into our food supply in the 1990s, and essentially what it is, it's when scientists took DNA from a substance like pesticides, and then they combined the DNA of a crop like corn, and they create a new crop now called GMO corn. And what we're seeing is in our food supply that large percentages of crops like soy and corn and sugar beets, which are actually what, when you see sugar in products, it comes from sugar beets. Those are now genetically modified. And because they were only introduced into our food supply in the 1990s, there's really no long-term studies on what the impact of ingesting these in children is, or really long-term in adults is, for our health. So, So Delicious feels very, very strongly that it's important that we select ingredients that are all non-GMO, project verified. So there is an organization called the Non-GMO Project, and they conduct extensive audits on food companies that are interested in the certification, and they'll come through and check out the supply chain to make sure all the ingredients that you're selecting do not have any genetically modified ingredients. So all of the products you buy from So Delicious have gone through this rigorous audit, and we always select ingredients that are non-GMO project verified.
Okay, great. Thanks for going into detail on that. We have a question for John. Some moms are wondering if you could recommend some ways to get their kids excited to try healthy foods.
Well, again, you have to get the child in the kitchen. You have to get them to make foods with you. And you can start small. A lot of times you can just take a banana and peel it, cut it down the middle, and then let the child do that with not a non-sharp knife. And then as they open it up like a sandwich, then they're going to spread a little bit of nut butter in there, if they can have nuts, like peanut butter, almond butter, and then put some raisins in there and some coconut, and then close it back up, and then chop it into little hors d'oeuvre sizes. And, let them play with things like that. On my website, I have a bunch of different videos they can look at, and I have some videos that I've designed, too, that are for kids on there. But you want to just get the child interested in it, and you want to also tell them, because children, unfortunately, are so influenced by celebrities and athletes, you want to let them know that their favorite celebrity or their athletes, these are some of the foods that they're eating. Hopefully it's a healthy food. But like more and more athletes are becoming plant-based. So it doesn't matter whether it's baseball or football or basketball. And you can let them know that, because children get motivated by that. And that's what I do when I go into schools and I do programs for the Girl Scouts. I'm basically getting these kids involved to make it themselves. I don't just want to stand there and make everything for them. I want them to get their hands involved with the foods.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. We have a couple moms wondering how much exercise per day would you recommend that children should get, and also how much exercise per day should an adult woman get?
Well, one of the main things in my chapter on motion I talk about is that if you exercise, let's just say an hour a day, my concern is what you do the other 23 hours, because it's not the hour a day that's so important. It's what's in between that's important. So you want to learn to live an active lifestyle. If your child just gets a half hour a day at a gym or with a trainer or anywhere, and they're sitting in school all day, or they're lying in a bed and then they're sitting in front of a TV or a computer, that's very dangerous for them, because their circulatory system is impeded. Most of your lymph nodes are in your breast and your groin region. So when you're sitting and you're doing computer stuff, that your arms aren't moving and your legs aren't moving, and that impedes your lymphatic system, which is your immune system. So I don't really care how much somebody's exercising. I care how much they're moving throughout the day. I would get children off a couch, have them sit on the floor. If they're watching TV, every time the commercial comes on, they're doing some sort of exercise, 2 push-ups, 5 push-ups, 5 sit-ups, something like that, running in place, 20 jumping jacks, things like that. You want to get them moving throughout the day, and that goes the same thing with parents. When I have clients come to me that are 300-plus pounds, and they're parents, and they take care of kids, and they work, and they don't have time to go to a gym, in less than a year, they lose 100 pounds with me following a plant-based diet and sneaking movement in. So they sneak it in. So when the parent takes the child to the park, I have the parent throw a ball as far as they can, and the children run to it, and they power walk to it. So it's just sneaking movement in throughout the day. That's the secret.
All right, great recommendations. Thank you. We have a question for Hillary, wondering if mom ambassadors can find So Delicious recipes online. Do you offer any on your website?
We do, and actually our Facebook page is a fantastic resource as well. So there's a recipe section, and we post recipes several times a week. So that's a great place to go. And then we actually, on our website, should have posted, we have a PDF cookbook as well, so there should be a recipe section there too.
All right, great.
And then also, I think on So Delicious, we've also done some chats. So there might be still some information on there that I had left on the chats.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, JP has done some Facebook chats as well, so there's some recipe ideas there as well. So yeah, hunting around Facebook on our pages is always really a great place to start.
All right, great. Thank you. John, we were wondering if you had any recommendations for our moms of things that will help keep them less stressed.
Well, yeah, that's a good one because that's usually the biggest challenge I find actually is for caregivers and parents. They have the most stress. Caregivers caring for their parents, and unfortunately, that's one of the biggest challenges that I have to deal with. And so, one of the things that I try to do is encourage parents to spend quiet time with their children. Hence, they get quiet time too. So, teaching your child, let's take 20 deep breaths and try to learn, try to get the child to do some sort of visualization where we sit down and we're going to visualize X amount of whatever it is, whether us playing a sport or us doing something where you can break the day, where you can have a little, kind of like a little pause in the day where you can reduce your stress level. Exercising with your child will help a lot also, and that's very important because when you can go walk with your child or play outside and run with them, that reduces your stress level. And, the most important thing is, I think the challenge is that parents need to realize that everybody has stress no matter what. Even your children have stress, and we don't know. It's just a natural part of our life today. But learning how to deal with it through exercise and breathing and meditation and a good diet, you just have to continually keep sneaking those things in. And that's one of the reasons I have parents always try not to go out to eat. I want them in the kitchen. And a lot of parents say, well, God, that causes me no more stress. No, that's the time where I actually have my clients go into the kitchen, and almost when they're chopping the vegetables and chopping food, that's their pause, that's their meditation. The more that we go out and we get foods from restaurants, we think that we're making our life easier, but it's really not, because it's introspection. It's time when you're cooking and you're cleaning. I know it sounds funny, but that you're actually having a pause in your day. And most parents find that very, very odd, but I think that's the most important thing that I can teach parents, is that you want to put it's almost like a meditation time every time that you're cleaning or every time that you're cooking. So where you're focusing 100%, you're not daydreaming about something else.
Okay, great. We have a question for John here. I'm wondering what the biggest advantage to cutting back on processed foods would be in your eyes.
Well, first of all, there's no fiber in processed foods. So we spend $725 million a year on laxatives. The more constipated you are or your child is, the more toxemia and autointoxication that occurs. So all the poisons that can't get out the bowel get reabsorbed into the bloodstream and damage and or kill cells. There's no antioxidants in processed foods unless they synthetically add them, and they're synthetic. They're not natural. So they're low in fiber. They're low in water. They're all dry. So most people are suffering from subclinical dehydration all the time. And the thicker your blood becomes, the less capable you are of delivering oxygen, because your red blood cells swimming in blood. If your blood is thick, hence from dehydration, you're going to be tired. When you're tired, you're going to use a stimulant like sugar or caffeine or a drug to stimulate you even more. And so it just goes on and on and on. All those processed foods are just loaded with cholesterol, saturated fat, sugar, just artificial flavorings. And there couldn't be anything worse for you than animal products and processed foods. I mean, like I said, 90% of the diet is composed of that. And that's one of the reasons you see so much obesity and children with, diabetes. And we see every 33 seconds in the United States somebody having a heart attack, and 50% of those people die. I mean, this is processed foods and animal products.
All right, great. Thanks for going into detail on that. Hillary, we have a question for you. A lot of our moms are wondering where the So Delicious facilities are based, and if you guys ever offer tours of your facility.
Our facilities are based in Eugene, Oregon, and in terms of tours, that's a really good question. We don't actually have sort of public tours the way some manufacturing facilities do, but I think it's something that we could do in the future. We right now have a few mobile tours. We have several Sprinter vans that are going out across the country and doing sampling at all different kinds of events and parks and festivals. So we're bringing products to other folks. And you can check our schedule for that if you're interested in trying some free samples while we're on the road across the country this summer on our website.
All right, great. So we have one last question here today before we wrap up for John. Just kind of a final thought, in your eyes, what the biggest benefit to using dairy alternatives is.
Well, I mean, like I said, there's no food I think that's worse for you than dairy products. So you're eliminating the natural occurring hormones in the cow. The synthetic ones, you're eliminating cholesterol and saturated fat, and you're also eliminating the types of protein. If you read the book, The China Study by T. Colin Campbell, he was a researcher that was trying to prove to the world that you could cure disease and help the world by using dairy products. And as he researched more and more, he found out, wait a minute, he can turn cancer on and turn cancer off by the amount of casein, which is milk protein. So the more casein in the diet, the higher the cancer rates. So there could be no food worse for you than dairy products. It's an impossibility. I mean, it's the worst in the world. So anything that you can do to reduce your dairy consumption is critical. And cheese will be the hardest for everyone because casomorphins are natural opiate-like substances that are in dairy. And that's so as a mother, your baby will continue to suckle, continue to breastfeed, right? Because the thing is that you want the breast milk to be attractive. And so there's casomorphins and they're basically addictive drugs, and they're very hard to get off of, and they're casomorphins in cheese. So every time you're consuming dairy products, it's hard to give it up because you're actually taking a drug. So the best thing that you could do would be get off dairy products as quickly as possible.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much, guys, for answering everyone's questions. Do you guys have any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
I would just like to say the most important thing as a parent that you can do is to make sure that you tell your child and your children how much you love them and how great they are and how wonderful they are, and give them positive reinforcement all the time. And make sure that you hold your child's hand and you hug your child, because children need that connection. They need to feel that love, not just with words, but they actually need to feel it. I think that's the most important thing that I'd like to leave everyone with.
And I would just add that if you have any questions at all for So Delicious, contact us at info@SoDeliciousDairyFree. Our customer service team is really knowledgeable and can provide any details on any other questions you have.
All right, great. Well, everyone attending, thank you again for your time. And to the mom ambassadors who will be sampling So Delicious, we're really looking forward to your feedback. We're going to go ahead and sign off now. Have a good day, everyone.